Okay, so this is going to be the individual assignment, the essential trace elements paper. It'll be on my paper presentation pamphlet thing that you guys do on your own. Everything else will be as a team. So you click on here to get the rubric, but first let's just go through the description of it. Prepare a 700-word paper in which you describe how trace elements are essential for organisms to survive. Include the explanation of how trace elements move from the environment into the organism's body. Identify and define at least 3 of the suckers, the trace elements, and where they may be found within the ecosystem. Discuss how they are introduced to organisms naturally, artificially, or both. Explain the importance of these trace elements within an organism and what consequences result if the organisms are deficient of each element. So I would be really tempted to pick like one type of critter, like a dog, a guinea pig, a human, just so you wouldn't have to be, so you'd have something to focus on, but your choice. Describe the chemical nature of the 3 trace elements regarding their electron structure and how this information aids in predicting chemical reactions. Format it consistent with APA guidelines, and then you add it. It has to be a Word document. So let's now look at what will pop out when you download the rubric. Alright, so this is not a lab, so it's due on Monday like normal, thank goodness. And you're going to see the rubric. It's basically got the same suckers in there. It's just going to break it down. So it's going to be a point for those elements, where they are, what they are, where they're found, how they're introduced. I would probably have that in its own section. So you do your, like, you know, title page, your title heading, your introduction, and then I would have a section on this. I might say like all about, and then list whatever 3 trace elements I'm focusing on are. Make sure it's the same 3 trace elements throughout the paper. Then 1 point for the importance within the organism and the consequences of a deficiency. So if I did the element, I don't know, we'll say I'm going to make up an element. So let's say I picked an element, cricketonium, which bearded dragons need because they get it through crickets. So you would say, well, it lets them be full and it provides them energy, and not having it would make them really sick. And how would it make them sick? What does it give them? That kind of thing. Okay, and then you get a point for those 3 elements again, and then what is the chemical nature, and then how does this enable the scientist to predict or react? So that would probably be its own section. I would likely to get a picture offline of the chemical nature of like what it actually looks like, you know, the little atoms and the little rings and stuff, but whatever works for you. If you do that, just, you know, do the print screen, give credit. And then how does it help you predict? So if it has the outer stuff, or what's, you know, what are the elements, how do we know what it's reacting with? Textbook will probably go into this a little bit. Otherwise, online, lots of information. Just make sure it's a credible source. So try for a .org, a .edu. Usually .edus with this kind of stuff, right? And then for make sure grammar, word, definitely have a thesis. I will be very grumpy if there's not a thesis, and have readability. Use your correct citations, and if you don't have any references, I'm going to give you a big fat 0 on the whole damn thing. That's because you're in 350, you know to cite something. It's not like you knew all this on your own, right? So make sure you have that citation. There's examples of how to do all of this. If you go to the class messages, there's going to be a 300 level breakdown. There'll be a paper, what's it called? Not an example paper, a template, and there'll be all the different ways to approach APA. If you have worries, as always, send me a rough draft. I love to edit things. They make me happy, and since I do grade these, I can let you know where I feel like you need more information. You will notice each of the topics has equal point value. That means they should be approximately equal in length, and then the format, citation stuff is equal in total. That just, you know, make sure you have all that stuff. You guys are 350, you should know, right? Should be good? Good. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Pick your 3 trace elements. It's nice if you can pick one organism to kind of focus on with these elements. It could be a human, doesn't matter. But if you want to just talk about in general, it's fine. Just make sure they're the same 3 trace elements. Another way to break this down would be to talk about, like, say you were doing our cricketonium again, or whatever I called it, our cricketonium, and you might do a section on just that, and then talk about all 3 things for that one element. And then you could do a section on like mealwormium, it's the other thing he eats a lot of, and then you would talk about all three things. So you can either break it this way or do it by element. Just whatever works in your brain better. Just make sure you talk about all three things if you break it up by element rather than this method. Make sense? I hope this helps. Do wonderful. Submit drafts. Make me happy. Keep me busy. Sounds great.